I also want to acknowledge that, as mentioned this morning, we are coming to you from Simon Fraser University, from SFU's Community Engaged Research Initiative, and we respectfully and with gratitude work on the shared traditional Coast Salish lands of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, the Musqueam, and the Coquitlam nations in Vancouver and Burnaby. SFU is also on the lands of the Katsi, the Kwantlen, the Coquitlam, the Kakite, the Musqueam, numerous Stolo nations, Semiahmoo, and the Tsawwassen nations in Surrey. We acknowledge the sovereignty and equality of Indigenous nations and are guided by aspirations to remake Canada into a decolonial state comprised of Indigenous and non-Indigenous people who function with respect for one another. As we turn now to our afternoon panel, opening panel, Walk With Me, Uncovering the Human Dimensions of the Opioid Crisis, I want to note that we have community agreements for our interaction today, and those are going to be shared in the chat. Those community agreements outline our expectations from one another, including the fact that panel discussions are being recorded and will be posted on the CERi website. I also want to remind you that we have set up a Padlet, and in a moment you'll see the link to the Padlet and the password for that in our chat. The Padlet gives you an opportunity to make comments, offer responses to each other as audience members, to let us know a little bit about who you are. And so we really encourage you to contribute to the Padlet. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A link. And we would ask you to, over the course of the panel, please bring forward any questions or comments that you have that you'd like to share with the panelists. We have people who are in the background who are overseeing the Q&A, and they'll bring those questions to our panel at the near to the end of our first session. So it's wonderful, again, to get underway. And now it's a tremendous honor for me to bring into our screen Sharon Karsten, Dr. Sharon Karsten. Sharon and I have known each other and worked together over the last decade. Sharon is one of the drivers and key forces behind the whole Field Stories program. So it's a great honor for me to introduce her to you. Sharon is a community engaged researcher, a cultural manager, and change advocate. She's a postdoc at Thompson Rivers University and a graduate of the School of Communication at SFU. She is a sensitive and nuanced researcher and collaborator, and I think what we're going to share together in the next hour is going to be brilliant. So Sharon, welcome, and I turn the tiles over to you.
Thank you, Stuart. And can I please just ask our Walk With Me team to make yourself visible? Thank you. I just want to begin by just thanking you and saying what an honor it is to be here, to be holding these conversations, to have witnessed the conversations this morning and been a part of those, and just a huge honor for us as the Walk With Me team to be here in this super dynamic change environment. So thank you. I'd like to introduce first off our elder and traditional knowledge keeper, Barb White, who helps us to hold the stories in a good way for this project, and who will welcome us and provide a prayer as we begin this conversation. And we are sort of in a bubble on our in our space here, so you'll see me juggling my computer around.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us today. My name is Barbara White. I was born Barbara Billy. I'm a descendant of the Pentlatch people, the Coast Salish Northern settlement in Courtenay on my father's side, and a descendant of the Coquitlam people on my mother's side. On behalf of the members of the Comox First Nations, I'd like to welcome you to the unceded territory of the Comox people, all my relations. And I'd like to say a quick prayer. I ask the Creator to oversee us today as we open up our hearts, connect our hearts with our mind, to bring our minds together to create a healthy social atmosphere that supports the body, mind, and spirit of, of the people in our communities, all my relations.
Thank you. I want to just take a moment to acknowledge the many ways in which Elder Barb has contributed and provided teachings to our entire team throughout this project. And we just want to honor and thank you for all you've done to help us hold these stories in a good way.
Thanks, Sharon.
I'd like to introduce as well other members of our team. This is Sam Franey. And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sam Franey. I am the Director of Community Engagement with the Walk With Me project. I'm also a person with lived experience as an alcoholic and addict, and also spent quite a long time on the streets as well. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
This is Sophia Katsanakakis.
I'll move over here. Put one on the right. Hi everyone, my name is Sophia. I am the communications coordinator for the Walk With Me project. I'm also somebody with lived experience with addiction, and it's an honor to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Galen, can I turn it over to you?
Thanks, Sharon. Hi, my name is Galen Richter. I am an outreach worker with ABI Health and Community Services. I moved to the Valley about 3.5 years ago. I previously lived in East Vancouver, where I worked on the downtown east side for 17 years, and unfortunately had to respond to overdoses basically on a daily basis. So the work is very close to my heart, and I'm honored to be a part of the project. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Galen. Patty, would you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Ani bonjour. My name is Patty. I'm Anishinaabe Kwe. I'm Bear Clan. My family comes from Turtle Mountain Ojibwe people on my father's side, and I am also European on my mother's side, Irish and Scottish. So it's really happy to be here. I'm a program director of Indigenous Harm Reduction Program with Indigenous Women Sharing Society, and provide outreach to our community to combat the overdose crisis, supporting people and everyone affected. I'd like to just say thank you for all coming today, and it's great to be here. Miigwech.
Thank you, Patty. And Nadine.
Hi, I'm Nadine Barito. I'm an artist, and I'm the creative director of Walk With Me. I am originally from Tiko-Tieke, which is Montreal, actually. And I live on the unceded territory of the Tsunemu Nation on Gabriola Island.
Thank you, Nadine. Just to begin, I think if Sam, do you want to do a little blurb with me? Okay. Sam and I are going to just introduce the project and tell you about the kind of parameters we're working in and our intention for the project. And then we'd like to open it up to our team members to really just jam a little bit on the project and our learnings. And we hope to connect with all of you as well on this front. So yeah, that's where we are. To start then, I think it's important to just acknowledge that this project comes out of crisis and is in response to crisis. As many will know, the overdose crisis in BC is out of control. This last year was the worst year ever for overdose deaths in this province. And I used to, when we were walking with our community with these stories, I used to say the number 5,700, more than 5,700 deaths since this crisis was labeled a provincial emergency in 2016. that number has since September risen to over 6,500. And so there's a rapid increase in rates of overdose in this province that are taking out people that we love. They're taking out family members and our colleagues. And we began this project with the question, what can an art gallery do? How can we make change in the face of these overwhelming numbers of overdose deaths? We were invited by Thompson Rivers University and a team of researchers there to develop a collaborative project between our two communities. So that's under the direction principal investigator Will Garrett Petz, and have been really mentored by that team as we've done our work in the Comox Valley. And over the course of a year and a half, we essentially sat with people with lived and living experience who then gave their stories to the project with the intent of making change. And so we sat with our community, usually with food, often with guitars in the room, and with art supplies. And people drew about their experiences. They told us about their experiences, and those recordings were then used to develop curated walks. And we walked with our community over a period of about 2 months. We set up outside on the Art Gallery Plaza, the Comox Valley Art Gallery Plaza. And together we walked over bridges and through alleyways and allowed the stories that had been gifted to the project to wash over us, to wash over our community. This work tries to it has the purpose of moving our understanding around the overdose crisis from something that is rooted in numbers and statistics to something that is really personal, something that we can relate with on a human level. And in this way, I feel so honored to have been trusted with the stories that have come forward. And I would say, I believe this is true for our entire team, that we feel honored and we feel that we have great responsibility to use these stories in a good way. Over the next couple of months, currently we are moving into systems change models with the stories that have been gifted. And we're working in hospitals with frontline emerge staff, and we're working with policy. So we're in a partnership with the substance use strategy in the Comox Valley, developing a drug policy. And so the insights that were gifted to the project are now being transformed into these systems and policy change settings. And all the while, we feel it important to come back to the people who gave stories and honor them and invite inclusion in our project. So that gives a bit of a nutshell, but I'm going to turn it over to Sam to speak a little bit more about your experience.
As a person who has struggled with mental health issues my entire life, and struggled with addiction, one form or another, for almost 25 years. And about 5 years of that I spent on the streets. You quickly learn that, or you quickly believe that no one wants to hear your story. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. And you learn very quickly to keep everything quiet, to keep your story quiet, the knowledge that you've gained quiet, and it's very hopeless most days, struggling in silence and not feeling like your voice is worth anything. And with that, everything in life becomes such a struggle to get through each day. just to survive, let alone to find ways to progress in life in a positive way. And joining this project and being able to share my story in such a positive way, surrounded by people who genuinely care about the individuals and about our stories and about the knowledge that we hold, has become one of the most empowering things to happen to myself in my entire life. It has truly changed my life completely. It has given me the power and the place to use my voice for those that don't have a voice anymore or are still struggling, and use it in a positive way to change stigmas held by people, to change systems, to change policies. But what it has done in my life is even more than that. A year ago, before I started this project, I was still on the streets. I was struggling daily to stay off of drugs. And I really truly had no hope for myself. A year ago was the last time that I did attempt suicide because of how hopeless I felt. And since then, joining with this team, I've now gotten to a point in my life where this is the best position in my life. I'm finally proud of my life. I'm proud of my voice. I'm proud of what I've been through and proud of the opportunities that are laid out in front of me. And it's because of the support and the caring nature that this project has unfolded. Because of this, I share my stories to university students, college students. I look for so many different ways to speak up and use my knowledge and use my voice to make change. And in doing that, I have been able to get off of drugs. I've been able to find a roof over my head, and move my life for the first time ever into a positive direction and into a positive place. And without this project, that would not have been possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I just want to take a moment to thank you for your ongoing contribution and just for your honesty and for all the work that you do to advocate in a hardcore way for people who are struggling. And I just want to also acknowledge, and maybe, and I know this is a bit off script, but I feel like this is important. We have, in the course of our work with this project, we have witnessed deaths. We have witnessed 3 people who have passed away who are on our team. And I just want to honor them and acknowledge them. And I also want to honor and acknowledge people who are listening right now who have witnessed this crisis personally. And this is not easy work. And I just want to take a moment before we launch into our panelists and chatting with our panelists a bit. I'd like to just take a moment, as we do at the beginning of all of our walks, and as has been our practice, sitting in circle, to just sit in silence together as a community across Canada, really, and just honor people that we've lost to this crisis and people who are struggling in this moment. So let's just take a moment right now and do that. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to just turn it over at this point to our panelists to jam a little bit on some of the teachings and learnings we've experienced in our journey with this project. So if I could start with Barb, would you be willing to start us off? Thank you. Yeah, what you've learned. Or we could.
Thank you, Sharon. Yes, it's been my honor to be part of Walk With Me, part of the creation of and supporting the people that told the stories. It's been awesome to see the transition of the people that have told their stories and how it's honored them to be able to have a voice, and for us to be able to show this to the community now. We never knew in the beginning where it was going to go, and now we're using the stories to bring up awareness for change directly into our health system right now, and hopefully other people will come on board in the future. I'm a nurse by trade, and I did safe drug supply en masse at Hatigwai. Some time ago, Northern Health had okayed safe drug supply through the hospitals, so the doctors would write up a requisition for their safe drug supply, and that would be ongoing for them on a daily basis. And it was really helpful to the community to have that safe drug supply available to those that needed it. That's the piece that I'm most anxious for, is to bring the awareness up to the community, to make awareness for change. I also sit on the primary care network, and I'm a voice for the vulnerable people on the primary care network. And this was part of our journey that we had hoped to see happen in our community through changes that can be made in our health systems to support those that are the vulnerable people in our systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Barb. Sophia, would you like to speak?
Hi again, I'm Sophia. Yeah, I can just quickly talk about some things that I think the project does really well, and that's a little bit different. And I think the main thing that comes to mind is that when we were doing the initial like connecting with and collecting stories from people who, either people with lived experience or healthcare professionals or family members, it wasn't just a quick like, hi, who are you, like, what can we take from you, and then goodbye. And like, it was very different from that. It was creating a atmosphere that was welcoming and safe, both physically and culturally, and providing of food and an honorarium, and just giving time and space for people to feel comfortable and supported in sharing their experiences and their stories. And that's something that I feel like doesn't happen very often. And it really offers a level of respect to the people who are coming and being super vulnerable with their lives and their stories. And yeah, like Barb was saying, like it ended up empowering a lot of people who like to start doing stuff on their own in the community. And I think for everyone involved, they left significantly better than they came. So they left feeling a sense of, empowerment and connection with other people, and just knowing that, and like I can speak to this as well as somebody with lived experience, like having all of these stories of things that have happened to me and things that I've gone through in my life and things that I've done, having those stories mean something and be used to either create change or to help educate everyday people on what our lives are like, and hopefully help to reduce like stigma both in the community and in the workplace. It really brings like a level of healing personally to have like my past experiences mean something and contribute to something that's bigger. And I think that was a huge thing that came out of this project for participants as well. Yeah, I think that I'll leave it at that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Sophia. I'd like to invite Patty to share insights if you'd like to speak now.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, I joined the project about a little over a year ago when Sharon came to consult with me about the importance of cultural safety in this project and how to really work with Indigenous peers in an Indigenous, in a culturally safe way. And so after thinking it over and discussing it with all the peers that I work with, we decided to participate, and we participated in several cultural mapping sessions with Walk With Me. One of my roles I find in my work in general is to create space for Indigenous voices and for our stories to be shared and having those opportunities. So that was one of my focuses in this project, bringing these stories forward. Many of the people that participated through Unbroken Chain, I sat with them and supported them while they shared their stories. And these stories were very hard to share. I also shared my story, part of my story. So if you listen, you'll hear many of our stories on there. And it was just very important in having those voices included. So that was a big part of my work in this project. And also just, I found it really amazing seeing the expressions and the reactions of people that went on the walks and the impact that it had on them and how it impacted them. Going on the walks was very powerful as a group, and just having those collective experiences and supporting everyone that was going on those walks was really good work. And I found it opened a lot of eyes. It also brought community together in some ways and created a space during the dual pandemics where a lot of people we've all been struggling through. So it was in that way it created support and community. Yeah, so I'm just really looking forward to seeing what the project brings forth moving forward and the changes in the healthcare system, especially in relation to impact of on Indigenous people and the recent findings through the Plain Sight report and the racism within our healthcare system that directly impacts the overdose crisis and why Indigenous people are overrepresented, also due to the impacts of colonialism. So yeah, it was an amazing experience. Having many people sharing their story like other people have shared, it's very powerful to hear people's reaction to it and see how it does make change. So thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you, Patty. And also just to say what an honor it was to be invited into your circle with Unbroken Chain. And just to thank you for making space for this work with your group. So thank you. Galen, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Sharon. One of the things that I learned from the program is the power of community-based art and how it can unite people from all different backgrounds and where we can get together in circle and learn from each other. And people who hadn't had a safe avenue for their stories to be heard or their voices to be heard were given a platform through Walk With Me. And it was a place of safety. The stories that were given to the project, to me, they're not temporary. Like, they will live in my mind forever. They're not something that you hear and then forget. And hopefully these stories help fuel the people who are committed to making real lasting change. It's been an honor. It's been one of the most important year and a half spans of my life. And I just feel really great about how the program impacted so many people in a positive way, and how moving forward we're going into the hospitals and into the healthcare systems, and hopefully enact some real change. I'll leave it at that for now. It's just been truly an honor, and thank you.
And just to thank you as well. When we first started this project, Galen was one of the first people I connected with, and to have sort of walked with you this whole time, and Barb, and just people, and Nadine, and then to bring our team, to see our team evolve and grow through that process was just like it was truly amazing. So I just want to thank you all. I'd also like to, I haven't forgotten you, Nadine. Nadine, would
That's
you like?
okay. Thank you. Yeah, I joined the project like since the beginning, basically, and I remember how the project evolved. Like we started in a very like kind of not knowing exactly where we were going, and now like we're really walking we're walking together, at least we're trying. And I remember you approached me and you wanted me as an artist on the team and to kind of guide those like mapping and drawing session. And when I first went to a session, there was this recording component, and I'm a big listener. I like to listen. I think it's well, first of all, it's how I learned languages, like, by listening. And so I sat down in this first meeting, and I was like jaw drop of listening those powerful stories, and we started to record them, and and in the context of a gallery, like I remember we didn't exactly know how to transform this as an art project, but soon we realized that those stories were the art in itself. And as we mentioned, the double pandemic, in a sense, the COVID kind of gave us a chance to move out of the gallery and go in the community, and that's where we decided to listen those stories actively instead of just sitting on a bench and listening to the story. It was like an act of acting as part of not only being listeners, but being active while listening. And so those walk into the town, I think were really powerful for all sorts of people as part of our community that were listening those stories. And the circle at the end where we were able to share. So I think what I just want to say is the power of listening is really so important, and it's probably one of the first tools that we should have in terms of changing and power of change. Yeah.
Thank you, Nadine.
Welcome.
Can I take a moment to just check in with Stuart? How are we doing, Stuart?
We are doing just wonderfully, Sharon. Your time is great. It's fantastic. Please continue on, and in maybe 5 minutes, if we turn to Q&A, that would be great, or a little less, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Yeah, I think maybe just if we could have some quick thoughts on where we go from here. We've been through a super intense year and a half. We've learned so many things and been gifted so much knowledge, and we feel that we have great responsibility. We have great responsibility in how we hold the stories, how we carry them forward, how we engage with change making with what has been gifted to us. So moving forward, we are looking to continue to work in hospitals, in our sessions. Emergency rooms were kind of one of the primary sites where people wanted to see change. And so we are excited to be moving into those spaces and to be working with stigmas and trying to shift cultures within these spaces. Other areas, what do you guys what can I just ask for? And we don't have lots of time. We have 2 minutes. So you guys, I'm wondering if you could chime in with just a quick blurb on where you see us going from here.
As it's already stated, we are heading into various hospitals, and as I've stated, we are getting into sharing our stories on a more personal level, intimate level through the colleges and universities. But this is something that can go in so many more places, and definitely needs to go in so many more places than just in schools or just in the emergency rooms of hospitals. Things like this, not only people's stories, but the connections made from the way we hold the space and the way we present these stories and share these stories, is needed in everywhere, really. I think especially with this COVID pandemic, it has just broken humans' connections with one another, and this project is a very powerful way to create connections with people who in the past have never been able to connect with one another. And so the sky is the limit with this project, and it definitely needs to get out into kind of everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask if anyone else from our team would like to weigh in on this? Anything you'd like to see moving forward? Barb?
I think it's awesome the work that's been done with Walk With Me in the group that we created to make awareness for change. I'm really happy just to hear that VIHA is taking us on board to do walks with me with their staff. We're starting with the emergency departments and hopefully going in and having time to go into other departments for awareness for change, which is really needed in our health system. And I feel like it's also needed in our school systems for an educational awareness piece. So I'm really grateful that we were able to create these stories in such a wonderful way and to be able to share them with the community to make that awareness for change. Thank you.
Patty and Galen and Nadine, would any of you like to chime in on this question? No? Yeah, Galen.
Yeah, I would hope that this might inspire other groups or communities to, attempt to do something similar and have open and honest conversations with their communities around substance use and things that we can do to reduce the amount of deaths and the stigma related to substance use.
Nadine, where do you see us going?
Going. Keep walking.
Nadine just wants to keep on walking.
I want to keep on walking.
Sweet. Well, thank you. Thanks everyone on this team for all your contributions. It's been a true honor to do this work with you. And yeah, I just want to turn it back over to Stuart at this point.
Thank you, Sharon, and everyone. It's been, as was just written in the chat, tremendous gratitude to hear the stories and to hear the voices of everybody in the circle. We only have about 8 or 9 minutes, so if you're okay, I'd like to jump into, there's about 3 questions that have come up and thus far, and one of them, if you don't mind, I'd love to read it to you, if that's okay. Comes in our Q&A. It's a 2-parter, so you can choose to take it as you wish, but what a beautiful network of care you've shared with us. In the policy realms where you attempt to intervene with the knowledge you have as a consequence of this caring process, what are the obstacles you found to turning your work into a policy resource? And I would just want to say, what's the obstacle getting into hospitals, getting into these institutional settings with this knowledge and wisdom that you've brought together? I'll follow up with a second question to that, if that's okay, but maybe we could start there.
I think that's it. Thank you for that question. There are many obstacles that do present themselves, and we will be encountering some of them in this next week as we begin our journey in hospitals. But we have the stigma is real. I just want to say that stigma, racism in the healthcare system is real. It is palpable, and it has real dimensions in the way that that decisions are made, in the way that people who come in with lived and living experience are hosted or held in the systems, in the way they are cared for in care plans. And so we are encountering, I don't feel like I have a couple of examples that I don't feel at liberty to discuss given the privacy concerns around them, but I do want to say that that stigma is something that we will combat, and we are combating every time we do the walks. In terms of policy, there is, we have yet to encounter huge barriers. I don't know if there's a moment in time when there's a huge demand, but we've had nothing but, and we've only, to be upfront, we've only really worked locally in terms of our local policy, our local drug strategy. And on that front, it's been all doors open, tell us what you got, people chomping at the bit. And we are seeing that in part because we brought our community leaders on the walks with us. So we were all walking together. And so when you're walking together and then you receive a policy document that says, okay, here are the 5 key recommendations and the sub recommendations, but you've been in relationship with the people whose voices have informed those recommendations. And you exist in a moment of time where there's great awareness of this crisis. That combination of factors, I think, has kind of paved the way for our work to ring into that particular policy domain. Yeah. What? That's all.
Sharon?
Yeah. Okay.
I just wondered if I could add an addendum to that question, which someone else might. A member of the audience wondered, you've mentioned working with hospitals, and the question came, have you had an opportunity to extend your work and impact with police and criminal justice actors? And what that dynamic has perhaps been like, if it has emerged?
Yeah.
Obviously a tangled question.
Yeah, maybe I could turn it to Galen and Nadine to speak about the instances that I don't know if you want to speak to this or not. Actually, I'll ask you that question. I'm thinking about the workshops and the police presence there.
Oh, that's a tricky one. I don't want to paint anyone in a bad light, but I feel like our local police didn't step up the way we would have hoped to be involved in the project. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Right.
Disappointing.
Nadine, is there anything you'd like to add? Okay, I think we'll leave that question there.
I think you're amidst a remarkable amount of generosity in your sharing and care for each other and others. It speaks quite a bit, your reticence around this. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I also want to say that I want to acknowledge the rawness of the panel and to thank you, Sharon, for initiating a moment of silence. The generosity that speaks to has fed the work so clearly. I also want to acknowledge the words that were said. I think it was by Nadine about the power of listening. And I think of voices who are not heard and who are not seen. And to Sam's point, to allow new kinds of connections, which this project so beautifully reveals. And I guess I wanted to take that. We have a couple of minutes left. I wanted to ask the panel, whoever would like to speak to this, for those of us at CERi, we have learned greatly throughout this process the power of the circle that you have maintained, including in the setup for this very panel. And I wonder if someone would mind sharing on that the circle as a crucial resource in community engaged research and what that means, because I think there's listeners in our audience who would value and benefit from knowing what that form and space means in terms of voice and care.
I think for that, thank you for that question. I'm going to turn it to our elder and traditional knowledge keeper, Barb White, as she helped us and taught us in this way.
Thank you for asking that question. I think the circle is very important to give everybody a voice and to treat everybody equal. The circle creates equality in the space that we're occupying. And there's different things that the Aboriginal people do. We always use the circle for our meetings. And the Coast Salish people like to move to the left, and the Kwakwakwa people like to move to the right. So we do little things like that to respect the cultural pieces of it. But I think the most important piece of it is that we sit equally in that circle and everybody gets a chance to speak. Often we use an object of some sorts, a feather or a rock, and we pass it around the circle. And whoever's we go to the left, and then when the person's holding that object, they get to speak, and they get to hold that space until they're ready to pass on the object. So it gives everybody an opportunity to have a voice for those who are a little bit quieter in the circle when they're given the object to hold and given that space in that manner. And having the equality in the circle is very important as well. I don't know if anyone else would like to say something on that.
I did just want to add to that slightly. As a person with lived experience, being a part of these circles is one of the most amazing things. These circles is where you feel like an equal part of the team and an equal part of the community, and it's these circles that show that your story is equal to somebody else's stories, and finally having a space and being a part of those circles empowers us in the most powerful way to get our voices out there and to share our stories, and it's such a positive and meaningful way. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sam, thank you. Barb, as to both of you, thank you so much for the direction on that. I think that recognition of contributions and enabling contributions from many places is something universities very badly need to learn, and that the project that you shared with us today is an example of a kind of working relationship and generative space that is tremendously powerful for all of us, but for institutions to hear. And so amongst so many things, I want to thank you for your direction and guidance that we take from your panel, and the remarkable impact of moving into institutions like hospitals is a kind of model that many of us would like to see realized through community engaged research. So the model you offer for us is something to be replicated and learned from. Our time together is too short, and I apologize for that, but I want to thank you all and share with you the tremendous respect and gratitude that we're seeing in the chat and otherwise for our time together. Thank you so much. Again, I want to acknowledge that the podcast that's part of the Walk With Me project is on the CERi website and will be available for the rest of today. And please take the opportunity to listen to this work, because I think it's such a remarkable reflection of this project.